or right now, because we are going to continue on here with the stream on twitch.tv/primetimepk. The NFL offseason has now arrived for two of the best teams in the NFL this season. They were hoping that they wouldn't have to get ready for the 2025-26 season for another couple of weeks. Instead, it is right in their lap. So, what do the Washington Commanders and the Buffalo Bills do? We will figure that out. Later on in the show, we're going to be looking at boxing pound-for-pound list. Also, going to be looking at the WWE Royal Rumble and just simply who could win it. So a lot coming up. Let's get right into it and talk some football. It is now off-season time for the Washington Commanders and the Buffalo Bills. For Washington, honestly, the offseason probably came a couple weeks later than they would have expected. For the Bills, a couple weeks earlier. Either way, it's here now, so let's get into it. Let's start with the Washington Commanders. I think that they need help on both lines. I think the offensive line looked maybe a little bit better than it was because Jayden Daniels is very good at running for his life. And I think that there needs to be a bit of help. I think the interior needs some more. Honestly, I'm sure if we went by guy, and I went down and broke down the film, there's well, no, this guy's fine. But overall, I just think there needs to be an overall talent upgrade on the offensive line for the Commanders. So that's what we're going to say probably is the biggest need. Like, you got this guy in place now. You have the quarterback. You have the guy. Let's build that foundation around him. It starts on the offensive line, and you need to go with that. But you also need to disrupt the other guy at quarterback. So the defensive line, you got something in Luvu, right? Timing on snap counts isn't perfect always, but you got this guy who is a very good run stopper who can go out there and be that guy in the middle. He can be that game wrecker. But you need some help on the defensive line getting the quarterback so he can create and he can cause that havoc and help out there as well. So a pass rush is really needed, I think, out in Washington. I also think that they need a shutdown guy in the secondary. It was just so clear in this game that they didn't trust what was happening on the corners. They tried Lattimore on A.J. Brown for a little bit, and it didn't work. They got completely shut down. Or they got completely picked apart, I will say, the opposite of shut down. So they need a guy out there who can be a real playmaker in the secondary. They probably need a couple of guys in that secondary to help bolster this defense and try to get them where they want to get to. And then the last one, I do think another receiver would help. Terry McLaurin, if he's your number one, I think that's fine. I don't think you need to go out and just get a number one stud or anything like that, but I do think a really reliable number two would help this team out a little bit. And Zacchaeus, I think was fine. Diami Brown, I think was fine, but I think you would rather those guys are your 3-4 than your 2-3 if you're going to be going up against Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, and the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think there needs to be a bit of an upgrade for just some of the things around Jayden Daniels on this team. Moving on to the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, the change needs to happen at quarterback. I'm kidding. They got the quarterback spot figured out probably for the next decade or so. But the defense is what let them down in this game. Almost let them down against the Baltimore Ravens. But the defense is what they just couldn't get the stop when they needed it to. I think you need a real game wrecker on the offensive line. You got Oliver in there who has caused some havoc at times. But it felt like there wasn't enough coming from that defensive line. Now, the Chiefs' offensive line had a really good game, but it felt like the pass rush for the Bills just wasn't getting the job done in the way that it needed to. And they did good jobs at times. They finished overall in the season, I think it was 5th in defensive rush, or defensive EPA per rush. So the run defense was fine, but they would just get gashed by the really good teams. And so I think you need those guys when you're going to be in a conference with Lamar Jackson and going to be facing him and Patrick Mahomes for a while. I do think they need a little bit more help on the defensive line. They are another one. They need some help in that secondary. That secondary got picked apart and can get picked apart at times pretty easily. The defense is just not good enough. They have Milano, they have Russo, who is hit or miss. That they have Oliver, who is fine. And that's it. I think that there needs to be, and that's probably being a little dismissive of guys like Hamlin and stuff like that, but they need a couple of more guys, I think, in that secondary to kind of lock some things down there. And then a big-time receiver would really help. And I know they just had that in Stephon Diggs, and it didn't get them there, but I do think that there was a lack of trust in their guys to get open in the championship game on Sunday. And I do think that there needs to be a real addressing of that. And whether it is Shakir or Coleman taking another step, I think there's incremental games for both of them, but I don't know if the upper bound limits of their career are stud number one wide receiver. I think they need that guy to go out there and be able to make a big splash and maybe get them over the hump against the Kansas City Chiefs. So a couple of teams that do feel pretty close, but do have some pretty obvious needs going into the offseason. Let's shift gears now and talk some boxing. We always like to do this after big fights, is let's see, how did this affect the pound for pound rankings? Being honest with you, this one didn't. But I do think that it is still a good time. Coming off of Naoya Inoue's knockout win last weekend, I think it is a good time to reset, getting ready for David Benavidez this weekend. Reset, see where the pound for pound rankings are, because we have some big fights and big fighters coming up in 2025. So here's another look at the boxing pound for pound rankings. The pound for pound king in the world of boxing put on a show last weekend as Naoya Inoue picked up a knockout win. He was already number one in my pound for pound rankings, so probably not changing at the top. Maybe I'm taking some of the drama out of this, but I do think with David Benavidez fighting this weekend and Beterbiev and Bivol at the end of the month, and then after that it's Tank Davis, I think it is a good time to just assess where is everybody right now in the pound for pound rankings. So let's get into it. Coming in at number 10 is Teofimo Lopez. I have said before that in making this list, there was a few guys who was, you know what? I think that's the guy. I think there's my number 10. And then you look at the resume, he's lost to Teofimo kind of recently. So, okay, all right, well now, here we go. Locking in the list. And well, that guy lost to Teofimo. And then you go on down and then you look at Teofimo, it's like, well, pretty good wins on that resume. So he comes in at number 10 on my list. At number 9, it is David Benavidez, as he goes for a championship this weekend in the light heavyweight division. And again, when we do this ranking a week from now, I don't know how much this is changing again. You look at the guys ahead of him, I don't know if a win over Morrell Jr. really gets you all that much higher here. But the big thing for Benavidez, and I think it is the big story of the weekend, is that this fight, I don't want to say it's a necessary evil, because I do think that is kind of glancing past Morrell, who, as we talked about on Monday's show, is a fighter to watch, and is a very intriguing prospect coming out of Cuba. But he is not on a level where Benavidez beats him, and you can put him ahead of Bivol now, and all of that. But a win here gets him into an opportunity where he could conceivably, they are looking at making him kind of the next one who gets the Mexican days, basically. So he could go Cinco de Mayo weekend against Bivol or Beterbiev. That might be a bit of a tight turnaround for those guys, but follow me on this journey. Cinco de Mayo weekend, he gets those guys, and then Mexican Independence in September, he gets Canelo. That is in the cards for Benavidez this year, is that a win this weekend, maybe it doesn't rocket him up the pound for pound rankings, but a win this weekend sets him up for 2 fights that could get him at the end of the year to number 1. That is where we are at with David Benavidez right now. Now, I will say, that schedule I laid out, if I were to bet whether that's going to happen or not, I would bet against it. I think it's a bit of a tight turn to get that for Cinco de Mayo weekend against Beterbiev and Bivol, and it sure sounds like Canelo wants to fight almost anyone else, and even if that anyone else is Terrence Crawford coming up in September. So I would be surprised if that is how it played out, but you at least can kind of see where this guy could be going and the heights that he could reach if things go really well for him this weekend and in the rest of 2025. Up next, at number 8, we have Devin Haney. Just a really, really solid boxer. All-around skill, all-around, just a very talented guy. And probably talent-wise deserves to be a little bit higher on this list. At number 7, it is Dmitry Bivol. He does have a bit of a setback against Artur Beterbiev, but now they have a big fight coming up in a couple of weeks here in Saudi Arabia. And I think he has a chance to just basically switch spots with Beterbiev. We talked before about how this has a chance, even though both guys are at a bit of an advanced age, this has a chance to be a really, really great rivalry in the light heavyweight division. They're fighting for the undisputed championship again, and so a big fight again coming up here for Bivol in the next little bit. Coming in at 6th in our list, it is Tank Davis. He has a big fight coming up beginning of March as he looks to continue his march up the pound for pound rankings. He is another one where it gets tough to move him up right now because of how good the boxing space is right now. When you look at ahead of him is Canelo, and that one is a more legacy-based type of a thing. If Canelo keeps fighting guys that he should have no problem with, then Tank has, I think, a pretty easy leapfrog ability there. After that, it's Beterbiev, who's an undisputed champion, and he got that by beating a guy who's just behind Tank Davis. After that is Terence Crawford, who got into the number 3 spot by beating a guy who was on this list and probably should be on it again in Errol Spence Jr. Ahead of him is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, who is that after being the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world. And the guy ahead of him is Naoya Inoue, who knocks everyone out and is a champion in 3 weight classes and undisputed in 2. There's just some really talented guys ahead of Tank Davis right now. And so, again, Tank could have a blowaway year and work his way up this leaderboard and work his way up the pound-for-pound rankings really, really quickly. But it starts in March, and I think it's going to take a little bit of cracking to get him up there. Nothing wrong with being the 6th best boxer in the world at any given time. But I think if I went up to Tank and said, hey, man, love your stuff. You are the 6th best boxer in the world right now. He would beat the hell out of me in ways that I couldn't even conceive in my mind. So, yeah, really great stuff. But just tough to get a little bit higher on this list. At 5, I guess I kind of gave away the rest of the list. But at 5, it is Canelo. I understand that the resume lately hasn't been as inspiring as we would want it to be. And continuing to not fight Benavidez is very, very frustrating. I get that he wants to bet on himself, move up into light heavyweight again, and get another opportunity at trying to crack through there. But I think that there are other things that he needs to take care of around him. And so he is the one that you could see really fall off in the top 10 here in 2025. At 4, it's Artur Beterbiev coming off of his undisputed championship victory over Dmitry Bivol. If you beat a guy who's on the top 10, you deserve to be in the top half of the top 10. Normally, that would put you in the top 3, but we got a real good top 3. At 3, it is Terence Crawford. The fight in August, it wasn't amazing, and I am a little bit surprised that we are still having the Canelo talks after Crawford tried to move up in weight, won, but did not look as impressive as you would have liked for him to have been, moving up in weight in that way. So I am surprised that they are going back to that route. It is a bit of a dare to be great, and Crawford, there has been a long stretch in Terence Crawford's career where he was one of the most talented boxers in the world, but he didn't have the resume to back things up, and so no one wanted to fight him because he was way too good for where he was. So if you fight him and you beat him, you're not moving up all that much. But if you fight him, you're probably not beating him because he's really good, and then you lost to a guy who's not really ranked. So he has spent a long time getting ducked by guys and missing out on these opportunities. And then there's a lot going on in his life, and he comes back and he has the performance of a lifetime in one of the most one-sided beatdowns of a fighter in a pound-for-pound, like, top 5 matchup, maybe in the history of the sport. And so, yeah, I'm looking to cash those chips as well. You can say, you know what? I think he just needs to kind of, let's see how he does just one weight class ahead and maybe whatever. But time's ticking on this guy. And so I can see him being like, man, fuck that. Let's just go. Let's dare to regret. Finally, there are good fighters who want to fight me. Let's fight them and let's see where I stand in this thing before the career really winds down. So I do commend him for it, even if I am maybe a little bit surprised at how all of that has played out. At number 2, it is Alexander Usyk. His victory over Tyson Fury helps him maintain his status. And I know he said he's the undisputed champion of the world in the heavyweight division. That is actually factually incorrect because the sport can be very frustrating sometimes. But he still comes in at number 2 in the pound-for-pound rankings because of what he has done at cruiserweight and now cleaning out the heavyweight division. Probably a really good fight with Dubois is coming up next for him. And at number 1, the man who just knocked out his 26th opponent, he is Naoya Inoue. Very interested to see what we get from Inoue going forward. I will say, I talked before about how this guy needs to get a little bit more of the recognition that he is due because he is so good, but he's not fighting the bigger names. And so someone, David Park, at David Park 2509, commented on the Inoue Fight Night Breakdown on YouTube, saying Inoue is already an all-timer, but there's still a lot of doubters. I suspect he will finally get recognized as a legend when he moves up, capturing a third undisputed title at featherweight while putting on an absolute show in America. That would be a game changer, I think, for him. And then we're getting into all-time status with him. So that would be very interesting. Again, for now, he's doing all right as the pound for pound #1 fighter in the sport of boxing on the men's side right now. All right, that is it for the boxing stuff. Again, coming up on Thursday's stream and podcast, it will be the Benavidez Morrell preview. But now we get into the world of professional wrestling. It is the Royal Rumble this weekend, one of the great events on the WWE calendar, in the wrestling calendar, just in the human calendar. And this year, it has been set up in such an intriguing way. So today, we're asking a very simple question. Who could win? Let's figure it out. We are on the road to WrestleMania, and that means the Royal Rumble, one of the great events in the WWE calendar. Hey Deeds, how's it going? Thanks for popping in today. Really appreciate you stopping in and saying hi. The Royal Rumble, one of the great events on the WWE calendar, and always it is sold as for a long time it was sold as 30 men, and now we got women involved as well, but 30 people entering this with a chance to change their life and go to WrestleMania. But we as wrestling fans, we know that's not always the case. It's like, hey, 30 people enter and 4 have a really good shot of winning. But this year, on the men's side, you can make a really compelling case for a number of different performers. So we're going to do that today. On the men's and women's side, we're just going to ask the question, who could win? And maybe make the case for a few of them here. So we begin in the women's division with, up first, Nia Jax. Do I want her to win? I do not. Do I think she could win? Absolutely, I do. She is going to be the largest competitor in that event, and that always seems to be something that they latch onto with this sort of a thing. I do want to say, while I can be hard on Nia Jax at times, I think her and Rhea Ripley wrestled the perfect match for each other on Saturday night's main event. I also think that her character work has improved immensely. There was a lot of times where it was, I am watching someone in an acting class trying to work their way through it, but she's obviously taken some because I think she has developed into a pretty, again, as we've talked about in WWE, a pretty well-rounded character. And so you could see a bit of an involvement where she gets this, and she is facing the person who took the title from her in Tiffany Stratton. We just kind of moved her away from that and didn't let that build up a little bit. And there's a part of me that wonders if they did that just so that you didn't have the obvious, hey, what, she's right there. Why aren't you doing anything with this? What are we doing? Go. I do wonder if you just kind of take away that, move her over to Raw, take away the temptation, but then she wins it, and that attention focuses back on Tiffany Stratton, and we see what happens there. So I think a very interesting potential there in Nia Jax. I do think for most people, and we'll do official predictions tomorrow, I do think for most people, Charlotte Flair is going to be the main pick. We're getting the vignettes that she is coming back, and it is very Ric Flair style in how they are presenting her right now. And I do think that because there was a little bit of like LOL Flair with all of everything that was going on, and oh, look, Charlotte Flair is the women's champion again. And when it first happened, it was, hey, we're finally giving wrestlers a chance, and look at how good she is. And then after a bit, it was like, there are some others we would like. If you could, no, still her? Okay, fine. And so there was a switch where people kind of got tired of her a little bit. And now she just kind of pumps up WrestleMania season, then goes away for a while. I do still think we have to acknowledge that this is one of the great performers in the history of this industry, male or female. Does she deserve a lot of the accolades that she has? Yeah. Like, I think from an in-ring standpoint, from a character standpoint, from all of that, she's awesome. And we just got a lot of it, so we kind of forget how awesome, or just don't appreciate how awesome that she is. We also, we got a lot of it, and now we're getting none of it. And so we just let this old mentality of like, ugh, Charlotte, fester in our minds. And the second her vignettes come up, it's like, fuck, she's winning, isn't she? Oh my God, she's gonna win, and we're just hating it. Like, we've let this, she's getting rammed down our throats, even though we haven't seen her in 15 months. It's a very weird feeling around Charlotte Flair. But I do think, again, we are talking about one of the great performers in the history of this industry, so that just automatically puts you in contention for getting this. But when you are looking at, like, they've done her and Rhea before, and that it felt like clunky storytelling, so it didn't really work. And then they did it again, and it still didn't work. So I don't know if you go back a third time for that thing. You could tell that story, I think, pretty easily. And I think from their standpoint, like, there's basically, like, you can tell a rubber match thing. I'm pretty sure it was only 2, right? I'm sure they paid it off. But WrestleMania-wise, if you're just going through and watching the chronologically, there's been just a couple of them, right? So I think that there is a real chance to do something there. Or Tiffany Stratton's the next one, and she is the new attractive blonde who can do athletic things on the block, and now these two are going to go, and it's going to be more than just a surface level thing, but that can be kind of the overall thing, and now we're building Tiffany Stratton into this next level. So I think either way you can go for it. You can get a Charlotte Flair kind of feud out of that. Becky Lynch is the other one. Again, one of the biggest stars in the industry. So I think that this is a performer that, again, you can really go with. And I think, like, her against Rhea, I don't know if that really works, given the two characters. I think her against Tiffany Stratton would be gold. And I think you get a bit of a tougher side out of Tiffany because of that. And I think you get a bit more of a well-rounded character on the Tiffany side because Becky can bring it out of her. So the one caution is that if Tiffany just isn't quite ready for it, Becky Lynch can just steamroll her. And so that would be a little bit of a thing, but I do think Tiffany is ready for that. And I think that would be a really, really strong feud. And so I think when you're looking at who would be a very good dance partner for Tiffany Stratton at WrestleMania, Becky Lynch is the way to go with that one. And then the last one's Liv Morgan. You're not creating a new star or anything like that, but I think as we have run through this one, that's not necessarily the focus right now anyway. I think that Liv Morgan, you have someone who has been at the top here this whole year, and this would be a bit more of a legitimizing win and getting her, like, she's been in the final 2. They told that story on Raw on Monday. She's been in the final 2 the last couple of times. She is ready to take that step into stardom. And then you don't want to do the Rhea thing again. We've done that. So you probably pivot it over onto SmackDown and have her against Tiffany Stratton. I think character-wise, maybe it doesn't mesh all the way, but if they are looking at maybe a babyface turn for Tiffy time, then I do think that there is a way to go there and still have it be good. And so I think with these ones, like, most people are going to point to Charlotte. Most people are going to roll their eyes if it's Nia. I think they'll be excited for Becky Lynch, but I do think that you get Liv to win this one, and there will legitimately be kind of a new star really solidified in the women's division. Couple dark horse picks, Io Sky. I'm always going to say that. I just, you see how the crowd was behind her in her matches with Liv on, like, Saturday night's main event, and then in the tag match that she had on Raw a couple of weeks ago. She is just such an incredible performer, and I really feel like you were on the cusp with something special with this one, and so I would love to see her get that validation and win that. And then Jordynne Grace, she is coming from TNA. The reports are that she has signed the contract with the WWE. She's been in the Royal Rumble before. She obviously has a very legitimate look. She looks like she could throw the whole building out of the ring. She is that strong and powerful. So there is, I think, a lot there with her. And if you just want to rocket someone to the top and create a new star, that's the way to go. The one I forgot to write down, and I'm going to put this one here, is Asuka. She is potentially coming back from injury very soon, and that would be a good way. You rocket her in, and that you want to talk about different characters of her and Tiffany going head to head. Oh boy, that would be fun. Or even like a her versus Rhea match would be incredible. So I think that is another one that you could go with. You welcome her back right away, and you have a star born on the women's side. So that's what I would do over there. What about in the men's Royal Rumble? This is the one where I think they have created a lot of opportunities. So we will start with the dark horses. The dark horse picks would be Penta, Braun Breaker, and Jacob Fatu. If they just wanted to say, you know what, this weekend is about building a new star. Because we've talked about this, right? Like, they have a lot of different feuds and a lot of different guys heated up and ready to go. WrestleMania is going to be unreal with the stories and the feuds that we can tell going into that big event. But all of them are all, a couple of exceptions, right? Like Sammy probably needs something. I would say, like, Jey Uso isn't all the way there, even though I did feel like Saturday was pretty legitimizing. Jey isn't all the way there. But for the most part, like, we're talking about Roman and Punk and Drew and Seth and Randy Orton and John Cena and Cody Rhodes. Like, these are all main event guys. I don't think they need it, quite frankly. So if you just wanted to, you know what, we got all those things going on and all these championship things, and it's going to be great, fine. but we're going to create a new guy. You can do that. Penta could win it, absolutely. Braun Breaker, I think of the three, would be the more obvious choice. And he could do that, and then either side, right? Like you could, I'm sure there is some kind of something from NWA with Dusty and the Steiners, and you can run through it that way. And everything there. Like, you could tell that with Cody, too. But I think, like, Jacob Fatu, I think that there would be layers to that, right? Like, just follow me on this journey. We kind of touched on it a little bit before, but follow me on this journey. Jacob Fatu loves Solo Sikoa. But what has Solo said this whole year? What was the entire justification for Solo turning on everyone in the bloodline and starting his own bloodline? Weird thing to say, but follow me. It was, we were based on championships. We were based on winning the gold and controlling everything, and Roman couldn't get it done, so I have to take over. Has Solo gotten it done? No. He's lost championship matches. Lost to Ulafala. He has kind of been losing it a little bit here. Every big match that he has been in, for the most part, my guy has lost. And so you can have Jacob Fatu come in, win the Royal Rumble, and now all of a sudden there is this feud building with him and with Solo as this kind of thing simmering, and now Jacob Fatu is the champion. And I don't think you can get this like sympathetic turn on Jacob, or sorry, with Solo, where Jacob is kind of in charge of it. I think it would kind of go the other way, where Jacob Fatu, it's the Randy Orton evolution thing, right? It is Jacob Fatu wins, and he's supposed to be the underling, and so Solo, in his mind, I'm the leader. I am the head of the table, so all the riches that our table gets, they come to me. So your Royal Rumble win, over here. And they turn on Jacob Fatu, turns him into a mega babyface, whatever, and he goes on to main event WrestleMania and win. I think there's a very interesting story that you can tell there. Now, he doesn't match up with a Cody if we're doing babyface here, and Gunther over on Raw. I don't know if that really... I mean, like, it's on Netflix, but it is still, like, that does feel like the second championship right now. So I don't know if that's the way to do it. So I don't know if it all lines up, but I think there's a fun story you could tell. How about the rest of them, though? Because there are so many. Roman Reigns, the story is there, right? If they just want to do Cody Roman 3, even though you're not going to top the second one, if you just want to tell that story and just do it one more time, I think you can do that real easy and have Roman just come out. He's the head of the table. He's back on top, and he is going for that championship one more time. I think we could all see that happening, right? Sorry, I missed this one before. Deeds, by the way, R-Truth to win the Women's Royal Rumble. It's going to come down to him and Santina Marella in the Royal Rumble. I think that would be... no, I don't think that would be fun, but I do think that you could have a backstage thing during the night anyway, where it would get me to chuckle, at least. CM Punk is the next one. They closed Raw with a stare down with him and the WWE champion. How can you not think this guy is going to be winning the Royal Rumble? He has been talking all along about he's going to point to the sign and he's going to main event WrestleMania, and that's going to be his thing. So how could you not think that there is a legitimate chance for him to win? And then honestly, like him against Cody or him against Gunther, I think it works both ways. I think you can tell that story perfectly. Drew McIntyre, he is a main eventer. He looks like I know they said this about Randy Orton a long time ago, but he looks like if you just created a wrestler in a lab, it's him. So he has been cutting amazing promos and doing all this amazing work. And now, like, this whole thing about how he has been trying to rid everyone of the bloodline, and now the bloodline is back, he can focus all of that over on Cody and lock it in there. And I think the promos would be amazing. I think the match would be incredible. So I think you can really tell that story. Sami Zayn, I think, can legitimately win the Royal Rumble. I think that he would then go for Gunther. I think that you would have... And I think you would have a great story, right? Like, the whole basis of Sammy going for the world title before was, I beat you once, and that is in your head. And it got Gunther to snap, and we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. You see the little cracks in the foundation with Gunther that way. And then he's pointing it out, Jey Uso is pointing out, like, hey, I'm main event at WrestleMania. Gunther snaps and attacks him. Sami Zayn can have that over him one more time. And we saw on Raw on Monday, Sammy gets a little bit closer to Drew. And we've been talking about Sammy in the world title picture a little bit. The ultimate underdog underdog cracks through and gets his championship opportunity. I think if they were going to go this way, a bit more realistic would be him winning at Elimination Chamber in Toronto and setting it up that way. But I do think he has a legitimate case to be made that he could win the Rumble. Seth Rollins. Seth is always over enough and is in good enough standing with this company at all points that he is always within striking distance of winning the world title. But then again, we just saw a really good back and forth with him and Gunther debating about what could happen with the championship there. And also, again, as mentioned, he had this thing with the bloodline. He helped Cody. Like, look, I wrecked my leg. I lost my championship protecting you. And then you go team with him in 6 months? No, I'm coming for your belt now, son. I'm doing that. Like, you could tell that story. Jey Uso, I think, could win it. Great promo on Monday. Crowds behind him. A lot of eating going on. I think that his match with Gunther, I do think legitimized him as a main event player in WWE and as someone who could win that. And you can just wrap that whole thing up by having him be the one who wins the Royal Rumble. And whether it's Gunther, Cody, I think there's a real interesting story to tell there. If Cody snaps, like if this whole everything's fine with Cody Rhodes story, that I'm dubbing it anyway, is leading to Cody just fucking losing it and whatever. Jey Uso coming in now as the babyface, and you have that dynamic where Cody was wrestling him as a bad guy before, and now you have switched, and it's both sides, and it's this whole sort of thing. I think there's a really interesting story you could tell there. And just talking through that, goddamn, that would be an interesting story with the Roman part too, wouldn't it? Cody has fucking lost his mind, man, and he is drunk with power. He left here and started his own company to try to fuck with you guys, and now he has lost it, and he's gone off the deep end, and in comes, oh man, this would be quite the thing. All right, I just stumbled on something here. So Cody has lost it, loses his mind, as I've said a couple times now. Cody loses his mind, and he is pissed at everything that has happened, and everyone is betraying him. So you know what? The only guys who I can really trust are really my people. And so in comes a Ricky Starks. In comes a Britt Baker. I don't know where she would fit in with all the other ones, but we're rolling. You bring in a couple of, maybe there's an NXT call-up or two that you have, and it is just like this code. Now Cody is the one who is taking everything over, and it would be excellent if it was an all AEW thing. Like, he brings Matt Cardona has always been his guy. So he brings in his people, like a Ricky Starks, Matt Cardona, and we bring in Britt Baker because apparently she's available. And maybe there's another AEW tie or something I'm not thinking of. And he brings them in, and now he is running basically his bloodline, and he is kind of taking everything over, and now the only one who can save us is the one who we tried to wrestle everything from before, and Roman Reigns comes out, and he is this big dude. And now you have this third match where it's Cody versus Roman, but Cody's the bad guy, and Roman's the good guy. Might be interesting. Anyway, just kind of thought of that one. Let's get back to who could legitimately win the Royal Rumble. I do think, like I said, Jey Uso, I think, is a very realistic case. If they just want to get into, we are building another star out of this, I think he could do it. I think you could have a comeback of Randy Orton and have him do it. And all of a sudden, like, he has been laying in wait and just letting Cody have his time, but now it is his time, and the Viper is back, and he's going to go, and he's going to take it from Cody, and that's going to be that. I think of the ones that we've talked about today, that one is the least likely to happen, but he's Randy Orton, and he always has a chance. Now we get into the last two where it is getting, I just booked Cody starting an NWO, but now we're getting into a little bit more of the fantasy booking aspect of things a little bit. John Cena, right? We've all thought about it. He's kind of gone away a little bit. Now he's coming back at the Royal Rumble. He's going to be here for WrestleMania season. John Cena wins the Royal Rumble, and he is going for 17 at WrestleMania. And whether it's against Cody, who is this guy who has this encyclopedic knowledge of the WWE and has kind of been this keeper of history, or he's going against Gunther, this guy who like John Cena represents everything Gunther would hate, right? Like it's the jorts and it's the wrestling matches that aren't all that great sometimes, but it's the passion and all of this. And Gunther's like, I don't care. I'm just better than everyone, and you are not good in my ring. So Fuck off. I think you could tell an amazing story with both of those. And then the Cena chase for a 17th. If we're looking at building shit up on Netflix, if we're looking at selling out a football stadium 2 nights in a row and really maximizing the John Cena run, that's the way to do it, I think. And like, we got a year of this with John Cena. And I do think the chase for 17 is going to be there at some point. And so I think that there are a couple of ways you could go. You can just get it done now. And now who's going to take this from John Cena all the way? Or John Cena, because we've seen him do this before, he gets his opportunity. He goes at Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania, and he loses. And now it's April, and December is way too fastly approaching. And so now he has to find his way back into that world title mix to get that last opportunity to get that championship match. And that is the story that we are telling all year. It does kind of go with the, like, Brock Lesnar, John Cena just couldn't get any wins, and now he wins the Royal Rumble, and now he's going to face The Rock at WrestleMania, even though he inexplicably beat Brock Lesnar at the one thing. But we don't talk about that, don't worry about it. He finally gets his win, and now he's going to face The Rock, and oh, look at that, he beat The Rock, and now he is the next face of the WWE, even though he was for 10 years before this. I know that kind of mirrors that a little bit, but I think that there is a story, an overall bigger story that you could tell with John Cena in that. And the last one, who could do it? The Rock. I think that people read way too much into him being nice to Cody and all those different things. It's like, okay, well, this basically just wrote off that entire thing. And we have heard reports that The Rock is not going to be involved at WrestleMania this year in Vegas because of prior commitments and all of that. But I do think that there is a little bit of, and we all want to believe that The Rock is this guy who didn't like being the bad guy, who did this out of necessity, turned it into this final boss character, but really, he wanted to be the nice smiling guy who went out and won the title at WrestleMania, and it's just the happy-go-lucky Dwayne Johnson going out there. But I do think, like, I just have to feel like they're smarter than that. And so I just have to feel like that whole thing around Cody is part of a bigger thing. And so I could see, honestly, the way I could see them doing it is 30 men have entered. John Cena's the 30th. We all love what's happening. Everything is going insane. And then the clock starts coming again. And then we hear, if you smell, and we find out that The Rock, who is an owner of the company, has just put himself in the Royal Rumble. Like, yeah, you know what? Added myself. It's 31 now. And I'm coming down and I'm winning the Royal Rumble. And Cody, you thought we shot tequila? You thought we were good? No. No, I am coming for you now. And all of that, the niceties and the smiling and the handshake and everything, all of that was just a false flag. And now I'm coming for you at WrestleMania. And I'm going to take that. And I'm going to prove that Roman wasn't shit. We got the tag match, I won. He got the singles match, he lost. So I'm going to be the guy who comes out and takes it for you. And we get the final boss once again coming around at WrestleMania. I think that I can't believe you do all of this with The Rock being the bad guy, and then he just decides he's the good guy and we throw everything out. I in my heart of hearts have to believe that what they did on Raw on Netflix was a bit of something to throw us off the scent a little bit. So that is where I think they're going to go. But all of what we laid out there, I think is really intriguing and presents a lot of really fun possibilities for the Royal Rumble coming up this weekend. So I cannot wait for this show coming up this weekend. Coming up on Thursday, we're going to have the full Royal Rumble preview. Going to do something a little bit different. Again, like I said at the start of the stream, the number one phrase with Couch Potato Diary is, I'm going to try something different. But we are trying something different with the preview this time around. Instead of just, here's who I think's going to win. I used to do this when I had a blog back in the day. I did what I would do, what I think they'll do. And we're going to bring that back. So we will do the Peter Klein Wrestling Federation. What would happen if I got the pencil? And we'll also do what I think they would do for the Royal Rumble. So that is the preview coming up on Thursday. That is going to do it for the stream here today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. As always, presented by Sea of Dead. Check out Sea of Dead 403 for that great Calgary swag. Shout out to Deeds and Toxic and Spy Canuck in the live chat. Again, if you are listening in podcast form or you're watching on YouTube, you can get these early by watching live on twitch.tv/primetimepk. You can also get the fuel that we use at Swift Energy. Check out swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PK Primetime for 25% off. They got some great stuff to help with energy and with focus. Not too jittery though, which is something that can really get you. Although, I mean, if you watch me, I don't know if I'm a ringing endorsement for not too jittery, but some really great stuff with them there. So, for podcast listeners and for YouTube watchers, that's going to do it. Calling an end to this one today. Coming up on Thursday's show, we have again, a jam-packed everything. We have Ultimate Fight Night preview. We have what is next for Naoya Inoue. We have Benavidez Morel preview. We have Royal Rumble preview. Normally, it's a Fights and Football Friday, so want to get a little bit more in the football aspect of things. And so this one, it might be a little more specific to your boy, but we've run through the offseason preview for a lot of these. I'm going to do a checklist. Like, what I want from a Raider standpoint. Going to be doing that, and then we're going to start mixing in some of the other sports as well, as the football season is obviously winding down. So a lot coming up on the podcast here in the next little bit. So thank you all so much for tuning in.